Let me know when we're all ready.
I'm ready.
Thank you, Donna.
Can you give me 2 seconds? I gotta go get a battery for my recorder.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Excellent. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you and call to order Zoning Board of Appeals meeting of Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. I'll begin with an introduction of our board members present tonight. If you guys could just say present, I'll go around the horn. I got Bob Seward.
Present.
Thank you. John Conway.
Present.
Thank you. I've got Tom Hickey.
Present.
And Matt Ostagai.
Present.
I am the chairman, Jeff Pangburn. Absent tonight is Scott Stravell, and we do have a vacancy on the board since Dan Smith stepped down. So we are required to hold a 4-vote majority to pass any resolution. Still 4 out of 7. We have 5 members present, so that is a quorum. We also have our zoning board attorney, Bill Hesney.
Evening.
Our secretary, Allison Lovely.
Hello.
Our court stenographer tonight, Donna Moran.
Hello.
And we also have helping us with the streaming tonight, our director of planning and zoning, Adam Yagelski. And our assistant planner, Dahlia Zorowitz.
Hi.
Hi, Dahlia. Thank you. So please take notice that the town of East Greenbush Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on July 14, 2020, beginning at 7:30 p.m. to consider the following matter. Appeal number 2020-05, the appeal of Collins Homeland LLC of 44 Troy Road, East Greenbush, New York, 12061. The applicant proposes to develop a portion of the required parking in the front yard in the PPB zoning district. The review of the proposed work will not comply with the following provisions of the town zoning law. Section 3.1.6, Table 3-C, area and bulk schedule, parking not permitted within the front yard. Therefore, the proposed action requires an area variance for the property located at 44 Troy Road, East Greenbush, New York, tax map number 166.8-3-12. Pursuant to Executive Order number 202.1 issued by Governor Cuomo on March 12, 2020, and advisories issued by federal, state, and local officials related to the COVID-19 virus, the Zoning Board of Appeals will convene the public hearing remotely as follows. The public hearing will commence at 7:30 p.m. and shall be conducted through the use of Zoom, a web-based video conferencing tool with local desktop client and smartphone applications that will allow board members and the public to participate electronically and remotely by audio and with or without a video connection. The meeting will also be live streamed on the town's YouTube channel. several ways to access the meeting tonight. And with that, we will get started. I'd like to notice that we have the legal notice as part of the record. We also have a notification of zoning review action on file from Rensselaer County. And after having carefully reviewed the information submitted as part of the subject referral, the Bureau of Economic Development and Planning has determined that the proposal does not have a major impact on county plans and that local consideration shall prevail. The applicant's engineer states that one reason for parking in the front yard is to allow handicapped access to the lower floor, but no handicap parking space is shown in the front parking area. We also have a planning board recommendation, and after some discussion from the board, the following motion was made. A motion was made by Chairman Maston as follows. The planning board votes to make a positive recommendation upon sound planning principles with a see attached report for further details. That report is entered into the record as our supplemental planning board report dated July 8th, 2020, with the review and details that the members received through Allison Lovely electronically. We also have 3 comments from the public that I'll read into the record. One received on Sunday, July 12th. I am writing to oppose the proposed parking lot in front of 44 Troy Road. I live on the old Troy Road near the entrance from Route 4. While I realize it is zoned commercial, I think all of the homes are residential with families. I've lived in my home for 44 years, and every decade I see more and more traffic on Route 4 with people using Old Troy Road for a cutoff at speeds far greater than the limit. In addition, it was supposed to be posted no through traffic. Some days it takes 10 minutes or more to get from Old Troy Road or Columbia Drive onto Route 4. So no, we do not need more cars coming from a parking lot. What is wrong with the land behind that building, not to mention the eyesore? Anyway, I vote no. Thank you for your attention to this matter from a resident. We also have a comment dated Monday, July 13th, 2020. This email is to say we oppose the proposed parking lot in front of 44 Troy Road. We live on Old Troy Road near the entrance from Route 4. The traffic on both Troy Road and Old Troy Road is getting worse every year. This proposal would make things that much worse for the residents of this area. There are times the traffic is so bad getting onto Route 4 from Old Troy Road, the wait is 10 minutes or more. This parking lot would make it even worse. We vote no to the proposal. Again, from a resident. We have a third comment letter dated today, which is July 14th. Good evening, Mr. Pangburn. I hope this email reaches you before the meeting tonight. I am not in support of approving a variance for a parking lot in front of 44 Troy Road. It appears that there are many residential properties along the Route 4 corridor whose owners more than likely made significant personal and financial investment in their property. I believe if the zoning board votes to approve a variance, it will significantly negatively affect the quality of life for residents and property values neighboring 44 Troy Road and set a precedent that will allow future business development along the Route 4 corridor that will lead to future devaluation of other residential properties in that vicinity and loss of quality residential living. It is the intention of the zoning board to make the Route 4 corridor, is it the intention of the zoning board to make the Route 4 corridor the next Wolf Road? ? Best regards from a resident. With that, we have an authorization form signed by Mike Collins, the property owner, giving permission to Brian Sipperly of Verity Engineering DPC to represent him tonight for the area variance. And with that, I will turn it over then, I believe, to Brian. I will note, Brian, we do have your project narrative in the record that all the members received electronically and have read, dated March of 2020. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Good evening, board members. My name is Brian Sipperly, as stated, with Verity Engineering DPC. We are the applicant's agent. The applicant, as stated earlier, is Collins Homeland LLC. The applicant is also the owner of 44 Troy Road, Collins Homeland LLC. The location of the property this evening that we're going to discuss is 44 Troy Road. It is occupied presently by a business with the name of Integrated Technology Group. They're an IT professional company. I do want to note that the ownership entity and the owner of the company that occupies the building is one and the same, and that is Michael Collins, and I believe Michael is on the call with us this evening as well. The parcel itself is located on the east side of Troy Road. As mentioned by a few of the public commenters, we are directly across the intersection of Old Troy Road. It is a 0.081 acre parcel in a PPP zone, which is the Personal Professional District. Parcel itself has 100 feet of road frontage. The abutters, as stated by some of the public comments, predominantly single-family structures with residential uses. So those abutters are going to be to the north, to the south, and to the west of the subject parcel. The abutters on the east side of the parcel is going to be an unnamed tributary to the Mill Creek. That's what we have over there. And as we've stated before, the site itself is principally developed. It is a single-family structure that has been converted to a business, so I call it an adaptive reuse. It's an 1,100 square foot structure, single story. Topography itself is sloping from west to east, so naturally on this type of lot, the grading, it has what I call a walkout basement type of environment. We've got no wetlands on the parcel in the area of interest that we're discussing this evening. Obviously, I mentioned that there is the 100-year floodplain does clip the eastern edge of the property line, and there was no research for any wetland. But in the area of interest that we are talking about tonight, no wetlands, no water bodies, no water courses, and we're not in the 100-year floodplain as it relates to the development or the improvements that we're going to discuss. The utilities, the site is served with municipal sewer and water, and private utilities such as gas, telecom are available at the right of way. And just in general, drainage on the property, sheet flows from west to east, and that will remain unchanged. The proposal in front of the board this evening is a request for relief to the zoning code mentioned by the chairman that states that parking in the front yard is not allowed to present zoning code. In general, the proposal that the applicant is seeking overall is generally referred to as parking and access improvements. So just a little quick backdrop on the narrative. There's an existing condition today where a gravel driveway loop exists. The site has 3 curb cuts along New York State Route 4, also known as Troy Road, which is under the jurisdiction of New York State DOT. So it's got a parking and access in the front and some existing parking down in the rear. So the applicant had approached us about needing a plan, and obviously when we understood that a variance was required, the applicant obviously understood it and wanted to pursue that. We can get into some of the tenets of the area variance in a few moments, but what I just want to point out is what we tried doing as a consultant for ITG and Colin Homeland here is really to say, look, we understand you want parking, so let's try to present a plan that abides by zoning in every way possible. And then let's think about the access and the safety of the site. We work a lot with DOT. The 3 curb cuts really don't meet the commercial driveway spacing requirements that exist for their highway design standards. And we said, look, let's not iterate on the plan. If we're going to come in with parking in the front yard, why don't we rearrange it? So it's morphed a little bit in terms of, I think Mr. Collins was really looking to take an existing situation and improve it. For lack of better terms, we're going to paint it black and stripe it. And through that process, it became a little bit more formal as it related to the site development and, of course, the zoning requirements that the applicant was going to face. At this time, I can go forward a little bit with discussing, our justification for the area variance, but I'll pause for a moment and open it up to the board for any questions at this juncture.
Actually, Brian, if you want to step through the criteria, the area variance for consideration and how you've addressed those or how you feel the application, the appeal satisfies those criteria, that'd be great. And then we can open it up to the board.
Sure, I can do that, Chairman. So, for the benefit of the public, there are 5 questions or tenets of the area variance law, and I'll kind of keep it at a high level and go into the explanation or justification, Chairman. The first one is explain how no undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood, nor a detriment to nearby properties created by the granting of the area variance. We are claiming that although the character of the neighborhood today consists predominantly of older single-family homes used predominantly for residential uses, the parking improvements in the front yard, we feel won't alter the character of the neighborhood as this style of parking exists up and down the road for the benefit of many residential users as it relates to the safety of accessing the state highway. These oversized turnouts kind of do exist if you look up and down the street from aerial pictometry, and from the standpoint of the character of the neighborhood, all the other aspects about the parking itself, we're trying to comply with zoning. The second tenet is the applicant is asked to explain why the benefits sought cannot be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. And so obviously the structure at 44 Troy Road, a couple reasons here, right? So one is it starts with the adaptive reuse in the zoning. This was a residential corridor. Route 4 wasn't what it was back then, a testament to some of the comment that we heard from the public, right? Traffic has increased from the old trading road that it used to be. The zoning in the town felt accordingly that the residential uses weren't the highest and best use, and obviously the zoning for the PPP was put in place to allow for the continued reuse of the residential use, but also the adaptive reuse of these structures. So as it relates to how do we take a single family home and use it for a business, we now start thinking things that don't exist in residential structures that have to be relevant to commercial. So one of those is ADA, okay? So, right now the structure does not support an elevator or means to have ADA accessibility between 2 floors. So if the applicant was forced to, let's just say, abandon the 2 curb cuts, remove what he's got in the front yard, and be forced to build what is a compliant parking lot in the rear yard of this structure, well, a lot of things start to cascade. So why isn't it feasible for the applicant? Because in this situation, this is going to be, and looking at the grades, what I call a heavy import site, okay? Upwards of possibly 15 to 20,000 plus yards of import that is going to be used just to make up grade. You're going to have a significant amount of drainage that is now going to sheet flow off into the area. There might be critical environment and wetlands. And so really it's a pretty heavy lift from the standpoint of how do you implement the parking in the rear yard. Even if we went through the heavy lift of taking on what I would call a substantial engineering exercise to move a parking lot, the owner is then tasked with kind of the cascading effects of, well, if that's my principal parking lot and ADA accessibility, now we've got to work on how do we make the buildings, the doorways, and everything else. And so that's really why we're coming at, can it be done? Sure, but it's certainly not feasible. And, the applicant is asking the board to take this into account and make reasonable accommodations as users are trying to adaptively convert these structures. In addition to the larger, set of construction exercises that would need to take place, right? There's retaining walls back there, so it's the deconstruction of retaining walls, drainage, and now we're really putting a parking lot and headlights into the rear yard where people are starting to enjoy your rear yards like swimming pools and decks, and so it almost presents some other challenges. The third tenet tenant, of the area variances to describe whether the requested area variance itself is substantial in nature. We feel that it is not substantial in nature, as the applicant is, merely seeking to physically improve what really was there with minor improvements that we feel improve the safety of people coming on and off of Route 4 from a vehicle maneuverability standpoint, but also the beautification and client experience that the applicant is seeking. So we're not talking about redevelopment. We're not talking about expanding. We're really talking about improving the parking, and while we're doing that, cutting off some access points and consolidating that. The fourth test here is explain how the variance will not have an adverse effect on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood. And again, our position is that the project will not have an adverse physical effect on the environmental conditions because we're really merely improving an existing condition. So our project does not involve the gross cutting of trees, filling of wetlands or other critical environment, other disturbances in and around, and even, result into changed drainage patterns. So from a standpoint of physical and environmental, this is really kind of a beautification, and with that beautification and improvements to the parking lot, which is sometimes normal and customary to business operations over time, obviously the change in access is part of that as well. The last test is whether the difficulty is self-created. So, a couple things here. I think at first cut, the way, I'm not an attorney, obviously, but most of the ones I've heard say if you own the property, you should be aware of this. So, at first cut, sure, it's going to be a self-created hardship. I think we are aware that of these 5 tests, that the board has the ability to weigh the criteria and not have one of them, so to speak, overpower, and it's really up to the board's discretion. But we do want to admit that it is self-created, and all attempts are being made on all fronts to repurpose the existing family structures into commercial uses, trying to accommodate those and conform to the zoning requirements that are currently in place. And with that, Chairman, I'll hand it over to you and the board at this time.
Great, thanks, Brian. One item I'm not sure if you were aware of or not, but the prior property owner was, I believe, NTech Engineering. Were you aware that they had submitted a sketch plan showing that circular driveway was supposed to be removed as part of their site plan?
Chairman, I do not have knowledge of a prior application from a previous owner. And you said it was for improvements or something? I missed the end. I was taking some notes.
Yeah, it was a site plan sketch for NTech Environmental Office submitted. Actually, it was dated October 23rd of 2015, prepared by S.Y. Kim Land Surveyor. And it showed that circular driveway in the front yard was to be removed as part of his site plan improvements. I'm not sure why it was never done. It's beyond the jurisdiction of this board, but yeah, that is something that we found in the files for that property at 44 Troy Road.
Yeah, thank you for making me aware. I guess not privy to MTech or what that application was, or why the improvement, I guess the approved improvement was never followed through. But I guess, is it germane into Mr. Collins' application this evening?
It is the same property. It came up through project review. I believe this property, when ITG took over this building, the original sketch plan, which unfortunately we don't have because it was just a concept sketch, the original intent was to build a tiered parking lot in the backyard and not take over the entire front yard as a parking lot. So I just want to make a point that, this property has been known to have some parking limitations that we've been trying to work through over time. So your current site plan, I just want to do the numbers right, shows about 7 parking spaces proposed in the back and 6 in the front.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's 13 spaces for some reason, and again, I'm not sure why it wasn't flagged earlier, but in the PPB zone, commercial uses are supposed to be limited to 3,000 square feet, which you are under, but also to uses which require less than 10 parking spaces overall without a special use permit. So that's not before us tonight, but just we're 30% over that 10 space limit with this request too, 7 in back, 6 in front.
So can you repeat the part about the 10 spaces, Chairman?
Yeah, within the PPB, personal professional district, under section F, special district standards, maximum building size, except by special permit, maximum building area used for non-residential purposes shall be restricted to either 3,000 square feet or a demand of 10 off-street parking spaces as a particular use may require. So it just lends a little bit of weight towards the intent of the PPB zone, which I will say allows commercial services while maintaining the small scale community neighborhood. So that's a little bit of what's in front of us tonight, is whether or not paving the front yard for a 6-space parking lot still maintains small scale community neighborhood use. I believe, as you had mentioned, that most of the surrounding properties remain single family residential uses.
So you're telling me that the zoning code allows 3,000 square foot at potentially 1 space per 120 square feet, which would demand 25, but this subsection F would supersede that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just for consideration in that PPB zone. And I'm not sure, I can't sign off on the math of the 1 space.
Where I'm trying to go is, certainly I'm listening and relating to the backdrop. I'm coming from a position, from a cold position, that some of this stuff through the change of use, change of occupancy prior to our involvement when ITG wanted to buy and move into the property, whether some of this other stuff and the existing conditions of the turnaround and what was used for I mean, I guess I was assuming the ship had sailed, but I'm trying to find out whether that is now germane and kind of into consideration, but certainly appreciate you telling me this.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it for context because this site has had a little bit of history. So for members of the public participating tonight, and members of the zoning board that aren't privy to the project review team discussions necessarily, I just want to make sure that they understood that there has been a little bit of history prior to this application itself that is out there. So.
Yeah, it certainly, thank you. Yeah, coming from, I don't know the backdrop, but you guys certainly have experience and history on this one. So I do know that Mr. Collins is on this evening. It isn't a public hearing. I don't know. Can you allow Mr. Collins to unmute and potentially talk a little bit about maybe what he knows?
Yep, absolutely. He is the owner, so he's welcome to
add more color
Just
to the Chairman.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mike.
Chairman, I don't know if you remember, but before I purchased the property, one of the requirements that I was seeking before I purchased the property is I knew that we would outgrow the existing parking area. And so before the purchase, I did attend a site planning meeting, and with actually Bob Ulick, who was the owner of Entech. I'm not familiar with the removal of the front driveway, but when we did propose like additional parking, the members of the site planning board had suggested to actually add or propose additional parking in the front. And so based on that's where these plans have recently changed, and we moved forward with that proposal.
Mr. Collins, can you clarify, you said you had a sketch plan meeting with the planning board itself?
Yeah, prior to the purchase, because, my concern was before I purchased that building is I wanted to be able to at least know from the town that if I purchase this building, I will be able to expand the parking because I knew I would outgrow it. Currently, right now, we have 8 employees and we have 7 parking spaces. So I'm currently, not thankful for COVID, but because of the rotating schedule, that's the only way I can meet the needs of my employees right now as far as parking goes. I have to rotate schedules. And this actually board meeting was obviously put off because of COVID. But prior to the purchase, I attended a site planning meeting on, I think it was November 5th. That's what my records say, November 5th of 2018. And I introduced just a sketch or possible solutions to additional parking. And when we reviewed that, and that's why it wasn't an engineered sketch, it was just possible solutions that I actually had jotted down myself. And when I presented that to the site planning board, the planning board actually told me, well, you would be best to propose additional parking in the front. So that's where all of this has started as far as actually, moving forward and proposing parking in the front.
I'm just trying to pull up my old calendar to check on that date, just to confirm what meeting that likely would have been.
And Mike, thanks for joining tonight, because I think I would have been ill-equipped to talk about the backdrop here if you weren't here. So thank you for, hopefully board members, that helps, only because I certainly couldn't answer your question.
That, Mike, 11/5 was a Monday. So my suspicion is that was a project review team meeting that you attended, not a planning
Maybe
board.
it was. I talked to Adam initially, and that's
Yep.
the meeting that he had proposed that I attend.
Okay,
to
so
actually
that-
review like possible solutions. So my notes say November 5th of 2018. We moved into the property on January 1st of 2019.
And I believe that that meeting, you had the sketches showing the tiered parking in the back. And there was some discussions about getting handicap parking up into the front. And that's where we said maybe to use a handicap parking space in the front as like a turnaround space. But it was not to build the parking lot as the front yard. Would have been the discussion, because I was at that meeting and
Yeah,
I do a ton of DOT work, and the 3 driveway curb cuts were always a bone of contention that property had those 3 curb cuts. So
Yep.
I think that's where we are just on that. So maybe there was a misinterpretation of what was thought on that, but that is consistent with the majority of the properties up and down this stretch of PPB properties on Route 4 is smaller residential turnaround, so people don't have to back out onto Route 4. But certainly no parking lots per se in the PPB zone in the front yard. With that, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, obviously. Let me turn it over to any board members in attendance. Any questions you guys want to follow up with tonight?
I've got a couple of questions.
Yep, go ahead, John.
Just a technical one here. Can you restate the square footage of the building? I thought I heard 1,100 square feet. Is that right?
That is correct. That's what our tax records show.
Okay.
Total.
For
Total.
clarification, hey, John, just for clarification on that point, I apologize for interrupting. It may show in the taxes 1,100 square feet. Is that total occupied office space in that building on first floor and the basement
I'm just gonna
subsurface
ask
level?
Yeah, that total is, well, I mean, the footprint is 2,000 square feet total. There's a garage area that's used for storage. So I think it's roughly 1,800 that's actually used for occupancy.
Thank you.
Okay. And in terms of the ground floor, the basement, or the first floor and the second floor, however you want to call those things, what goes on those floors in terms of your business? Are they sort of interchangeable, or are there some services on the first floor that aren't in the basement? Or
No, as an IT consulting firm, we design, support, implement corporate network environments. So the majority of the staff is support related. Administrative staff is up front. We do actually host a redundant disaster recovery cold site for numerous corporate clients of ours, which allows them in a disaster recovery situation to actually come to our building, our office, and actually continue to work as we store their environment in a virtual environment, which we then would be able to boot and run their operations from our site. So that is an office that's dedicated to the first floor that we use for clients. And that obviously that's only used in disaster recovery situations.
Other than that, the two floors are kind of interchangeable?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I was going to ask, are you aware that the town of East Greenbush is currently revising its comprehensive plan with the possible intention of further revising its zoning law?
I'm not personally aware of that.
Yeah, there've been a number of public meetings and actually a public survey. So I take it that you've not been involved in that yet?
No.
Okay. And in terms of the driveway, the semicircular driveway, is it in fact true that if you needed to, you could actually park 6 cars on that driveway?
On the circular driveway, absolutely not.
No.
At the most, if we were to actually, and the width of that circular driveway is actually barely 1 car. So even if we can fit 3 cars max on that driveway, it poses a risk also because it's so close to the road, where we had proposed to actually move the driveway closer to actually the building. So that was for safety reasons. But even if we were to actually fit 3 cars, and occasionally we do because we run out of parking space, but we cannot maneuver cars around each other because it's the width of 1 vehicle. So I would say 3 tops, but 3 is, somewhat of a safety issue, as that 3rd car will actually stick, will be close to actually the Route 4.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Other questions from the board members?
I'm not sure it's a question, but I guess my question is with the information that's been brought forward that
Who is talking?
Tom Hickey,
Okay.
that clearly wasn't known before this, are they prepared to go forward with this, or they would like to kind of reconvene?
Well, I've got a question on behalf of my client. Is the backdrop relevant to the board's ability to vote on the parking variance as presented in front of them this evening? And I asked that earlier, Chairman, not out of disrespect. I'm just trying to figure out whether the history had something to do with our request or not, or whether or not our request this evening can be heard on its own merit, regardless of what the history was. And I guess one would argue, if there was a plan and a request to remove the curb cuts, why did the town issue a CO to a guy without asking him to do it? I don't know if I'm dragging the past or kind of we tethering it, and I kind of want to pose that question to the board. I don't think we necessarily mind tabling it to reconvene with planning and the applicant, but I just want to ask that question.
It's a good question. We wanted to provide the background for the context of what's happening. I think the narrative said that there would be essentially no change in the front yard usage, that 6 cars could park on the circular driveway, which we just heard maybe maximum 3 now. We also thought it was relevant for the board members and the public to hear that there was a request to remove the entire driveway to start from 0 front yard parking. We would be prepared tonight, depending on what else transpires during the public hearing. It is always up to the applicant, not the board members or the board itself, to request deferring the public hearing to a later date. But If the applicant feels that they have additional information, they want to go back to the drawing board and change things depending on what they hear before a vote, that is definitely the applicant's prerogative.
Fair enough, Chairman. Thank you for that backdrop and candid answer. And we really do appreciate the backdrop. And it just, if you can, out of respect, just understand that maybe Mike and the applicant knew a little bit maybe, but we came in cold, so we certainly did not understand some of the backdrop. So at this time, if we could requestfully ask the board to make a motion to table it so we can reconvene with planning and the applicant.
We could do that, Brian. We could also continue the public hearing to see if there's any more relevant information before tabling that, but that's your call again.
I think we should continue with the public hearing, and depending upon what the board hears, if they feel comfortable closing it, that's one thing, but I guess let's go on with it.
Okay. All right. Just what I would like to do is just verify, is there any other questions from members of the board tonight that might be relevant for the applicant to try and answer tonight or provide further information going forward?
I think my only other question is on some of the buffering with some of the landscaping plan.
Okay, I don't know who's
That's
talking.
not,
Can you
that's
put that?
Tom, but I can't, my camera's not on, it doesn't work, but
Is it-
that's
Hey,
Tom,
Donna,
that's Tom.
Donna, there's usually a yellow
Oh,
box
this is
around
Tom
whoever's
Hickey,
talking.
okay. I
is Tom
don't see
Hickey.
that. I'm not seeing it, or I would know that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tom Hickey.
So again, my question goes back to some of the buffering requirements based on whether it's residential or commercial next to it on the landscaping. And I'm just curious with some of the setbacks that are required, 10-foot buffering zones as I'm reading it to the sides, and possibly even some requirements in the front that don't seem necessarily reasonable for traffic view that are required there. Has that been addressed in your plan?
So let's see, there are some, I will admit there's some anomalies in the zoning code as it relates to some inconsistencies with landscaping. Dahlia and Adam and I, we've had email correspondence trying to clarify some of these inconsistencies in the code. What you see on the plan today is commensurate to I guess a determination that planning had given us as it relates to how to interpret the code as it relates to screening. Your question about site view, our landscaping is shown along basically our right-of-way line. A vehicle looking to make a movement onto US Route 4 north or south will have ample sight distance as that vegetation is not going to extend into the New York State right-of-way. So, you know, it is our position that the screening will not block visibility onto and exiting off of the highway.
Okay, I think that answers my question, that it's already been reviewed with the committee and with the team in advance of that, and that was.
I will tell you, we haven't obviously gone to planning, so what you see is a proposal, but in terms of the location of what you see, that is commensurate to a discussion, yes.
Hey, Tom, as follow-up to that point, I think it's an excellent point. It could, we could make it a condition of any motion that moves forward, but it would probably be a good idea to get a review, a quick review from either code enforcement or the planning office on their take on the landscape buffers and how it meets the code or doesn't meet the code before moving forward. If we are going to wind up tabling this at the behest of the applicant, we could have that information for our next meeting also.
Yeah, that's part of why I was asking the question now.
Yep, great question.
I think Dolly is muted, but I think between planning, Adam and Dahlia, we can kind of round robin exactly kind of that discussion and where that is, when and at the right time, I guess, Chairman.
Agreed.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. Dahlia, you want to say something?
No, we can certainly meet with him, Adam and I, for revision on the landscape. So there's no problem with that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm.
Matt or Bob, any questions from you guys tonight?
None for me, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Bob. Matt, you're still muted.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. Sorry. No, I'm good. This is, yeah, it said host would not allow me to unmute.
Yeah, I just clicked you off, sorry.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. With that, Brian, let me see if there are any members of the public waiting in the wait room. Adam, do you have access to that? Okay. If it was that email we already read into the record, I think we're good probably there. Okay. Yeah, we can give him the option if he wishes to speak, that's fine. Just for the record, we did read that whole email into the record, so it is part of the public hearing record. Okay. All right. Okay. With that, no other public comment, it appears, on this application. Brian, how do you wish to proceed at this point?
Chairman, we are requesting to table the meeting at this time.
Okay. Excellent. With that request, I will make said motion to table the public hearing to our next available date. Unfortunately, the meeting at the end of July has been canceled due to a lack of quorum at the end of the month. So the next meeting will be the second Tuesday in August. Allison, do you have that date handy?
It looks like it's the 11th.
It's like it's August 11th. So we will table the public hearing till August 11th. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second that, Jeff.
Seconded by Mr. Seward. In favor, Tom?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So we'll end the public hearing at this point on this appeal. Brian, Mike, thank you both for attending. Thanks for dealing with this. Just a heads up, there is a high probability that our continuation will be in the town's Red Barn building over at the town park on August 11th. We'll be a meeting in person. The town continues to work through details about social distancing and logistics, but we'll get that to you when we can. In the meantime, Brian, I'm sure you'll be in touch with Adam to continue discussions on his site plan and next steps. So, with
Thank
that,
you, Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. With that, no need to go to seeker or workshop, obviously. Allison, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Unfortunately, one piece I did forget to print.
June 6th, 9th meeting
11th.
minutes.
meeting minutes of which date and who is eligible?
Everyone is eligible and the first set is June 9th.
Okay, June 9th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 9th?
I'll make the
I'll
motion,
move.
Jeff.
I believe that was Matt Ostagai. Second, Bob.
Yeah, I'll second.
Second by Bob Seward. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Even though Tom's muted, I assume he's on board, right, Tom?
I am, hit the wrong button. Aye.
You got it. Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Do we have another one, Allison?
Yes, June 23rd.
June 23rd, again, all five?
Yes.
Thank you. Makes it easy. Do I have a motion for those, to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Move to approve by John Conway. Do I have a second?
I'll second that since it's so easy for me to unmute.
Nice. Second by Bob Seward. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, guys. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to close our meeting tonight. Tom,
Motion.
Tom was looking to make one, and I'll give Matt a second on that one. Mix it up a little bit. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much for what may be our last electronic appeals meeting. We'll see what happens.
Thank you, Jeff.
See.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
You guys have a good.
Elliot, thank you both. Donna,
Aye.
thank you.